Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. And this is an educational channel. We take a look at great theories of everything ancient and modern and try to help you take advantage of them to the best of your ability by showing you the ins and outs and how they work, how they're applied. And today is our 539th video that we've done on Dewey B. Larson and his reciprocal system of theory. And keep in mind that it's Dewey B. Larson. I spotted that somehow in the past, 6 months or so, I managed to start typing in, or I made a correction and I changed it to Dewey C. Larson in the comments notes or whatever, and I copied that, and so now it's on like 100+ videos. There it says Dewey C. Larson. It's really Dewey B. Larson and Bernard, and I'm going to be correcting that slowly but surely over time here. So sorry about that. But Dewey B. Larson was an American engineer who lived from 1898 until 1990, born in North Dakota, did his work out in the Portland area. And in 1959, he proposed his two fundamental postulates about how he believed the universe operated. And then from there, and he was one of the few scientists to articulate a cosmology based upon motion, not matter, not energy, but motion. The universe is made out of matter. His first postulate states that the universe is composed entirely of one component, motion, existing in 3 dimensions, in discrete units, and with 2 reciprocal aspects, space and time. So motion, in particular, what he calls scalar motion. Scalar motion is a motion that has a magnitude but has no specific direction, which you can envision using a balloon that you put dots on with a magic marker. You blow up the balloon, all the dots are moving away from each other. You contract the balloon, all the dots are moving toward each other, but they're not moving in any specific direction. Every dot is moving away from every other dot, and meaning that every dot is moving in every direction, no specific direction. And then motion is the relationship between space and time. We can see that most basically in speed. I was riding my bicycle at 20 miles per hour, 20 miles of space in 1 hour of time. Space over time is speed. But Larson doesn't just apply it to speed. He applies it to all of our scientific quantities. They are all forms of motion. Matter is a kind of motion. Energy is a kind of motion. Pressure is a kind of motion, and so on. And they are all expressible in fractions, with space or time as the numerator and time or space as the denominator, with the caveat that space and time can have multiple dimensions. And so matter, for example, is time to the 3rd power over space to the 3rd power. So everything is expressible exclusively in space and time terms. And so from there, Larson derived, through a process of deduction, a theoretical universe about how he believed the universe operated. And then he compared his theoretical universe with the actual universe of the modern scientists that they compile in their scientific tables of different data. And in many cases, Larson is able to recreate the scientific data from his theory only. No telescopes, no microscopes, no complicated lab experiments that cost millions or billions of dollars, just strictly from his theory. So He also wrote books on other subjects besides chemistry, physics, astronomy, a book on metaphysics, including philosophy, religion, and psychology, a little bit on biology as well. And he wrote 2 books on economics. And we're looking at one of those books today that is called The Road to Permanent Prosperity, where he applies his reciprocal system principles to economics. It calls it the science of economics, critical of most economics, which he contends are sociological, where they are grinding their ideological acts, where they are saying, oh, well, I believe in helping the poor or uh, promoting a just economic system. And Larson is kind of saying, well, that's all well and good. You can do that, but you need to have your economic system comply with the laws of science first, the facts. And he compares the economic system to, a bridge or a building. If you're going to build an economic system, it has to comply with the laws of science, with the laws of physics, or else it's going to collapse. And then once you do that, then you can start worrying about the sociological aspects of it. But first, it has to agree with the facts. And then he tries to boil down his system to its first principles, looking at the iron law, work or starve. You have to produce something in order to avoid starvation. And that then he isolates the Robinson Crusoe situation, economics on a deserted island. What does that look like? And then moves to successively more and more complicated situations where then you have barter with somebody else, and then a medium of exchange or money is introduced, and then finally employees are introduced into the system. And those are the different stages of economics. And then if you look at the thumbnail, you'll see his flow chart of how the economic system operates. And it's quite different than what people contend. Last chapter, he was railing about people who, are trying to get money into circulation, that they feel like that's the important thing, is you got to put money into circulation. Larson shows how that is irrelevant, and that the stream of money doesn't affect the economy whatsoever, because it is a closed loop where the economics is an open one-way a one-way operation. So we started this book about 3 weeks ago. So if you want to go to the start, go back in the archives about 3 weeks and start with chapter 1. We're about to start chapter 9 of this book today, called The Markets. In the earlier stages of economic development, there was only one kind of market, a place where goods, purchasing power. Let me start over. The one thing I was going to say is that Larson boils it down to the reciprocal aspects of production and consumption. And production, you produce goods, the goods serve as purchasing power. And when you consume goods, the goods are articles of consumption or goods. And so the 2 reciprocal aspects are production and consumption. And they create goods, which are articles of consumption and purchasing power. And those are the reciprocal aspects. Okay, so In the earlier stages of economic development, there was only one kind of market, a place where goods, purchasing power, were exchanged for money or goods, articles of consumption. Such a market also plays a major role in the fundamental economic transaction in the modern world. It is in this goods market that the present day consumer exchanges money for goods and the producer exchanges goods for money. But the remainder of the exchange cycle portrayed in Figure 1 is carried out in an entirely different market, one in which goods do not participate at all. Here, the worker and the supplier of capital exchange labor and the services of capital for money, and the producer exchanges money for labor and the services of capital. Since the entire flow of the circulating purchasing power passes through both markets, it is apparent that this second market is fully coordinate with the goods market in the operation of the system. Functionally, however, it occupies a position in the economic mechanism that is the inverse of the position of the goods market. The real wage rate, the price of labor in terms of goods, is the reciprocal of the real market price level, the price of goods in terms of labor. Okay, try to read that again here. See if I can understand it. The real wage rate, real in quotation marks, the real wage rate, that's pretty hard to say, a tongue twister. The real wage rate, the price of labor in terms of goods, is the reciprocal of the real market price level, the price of goods in terms of labor. Okay, that makes sense. It takes no more than these few brief comments to emphasize the importance of the new market that has emerged as a component part of the fourth stage economic system. But it is only comparatively recently that the true relation between the two markets has begun to be understood. Some of the early constructors of price indexes, for instance, recognized that they had no more, no, I lost my place. Recognized that the price of labor must be taken into account in some manner, and they tried to include it in their indexes. But the way in which they went about this indicates that they had no more than a hazy view of the true situation. Carl Snyder, one of the price index pioneers, adopted a 15% weighting for weighting, WEIGHTING, a 15% weighting for labor, and 5% for rents, leaving 80% for items handled through the goods market. These figures give us an insight into his evaluation of the relative importance of the two markets, as well as indicating his opinion that the labor price enters into the determination of the general price level in the same manner as the goods price. In reality, however, there are two price levels, not the single one that Snyder and his fellow index makers were trying to measure, and the relation between the price level in the goods market and the price level in the production market is one of the vital factors in the operation of the economic machine. Even without the benefit of any detailed consideration, it is apparent from the reciprocal relation between the two markets that it is the relative price level that is most significant, not the absolute level in either market. From the consumer's viewpoint, a rise in prices in one market is equivalent to a fall in the other. And any change which affects both equally is no change at all. In any case, such as this, where one quantity is, in effect, the reciprocal of the other, it is possible to express all variability in both quantities in terms of either one or the other. That is, we can compute one index and let it do the work of two. The present practice is to set up an index of goods prices, a cost of living index, a construction cost index, or something of the kind, and then to use this index not only as an indication of the goods price level, but also by relating wages to a constant goods price level, and as an indication of the level of real wages, the wage level in terms of goods. The opposite procedure is equally possible. That is, we can compute what we may call real prices, the market prices in terms of labor, but such figures have less practical utility and are seldom used except in comparisons between different national economies, where a statement as to the number of hours it is necessary to work in each country to earn the price of a particular commodity is more impressive than any comparison expressed in purely monetary terms. The present-day computations of the price levels are mathematically sound, aside from what seems to be an unavoidable degree of inaccuracy, and are undeniably useful for many purposes. However, the concentration of attention on the goods market has had the effect of obscuring the very significant role that the production market plays in the economy. This is all the more unfortunate because the markets are affected by different influences and do not respond to changing conditions in the same way. The most striking differences are due to the fact that the production market and the production process are located at the end of the main economic stream, and it is here and only here that the streams of economic activity are subject to deliberate control. The volume of production can here be adjusted to whatever level seems appropriate. And once this decision, in practice the sum of many individual decisions, is made, the volume of goods flowing to the markets is fixed, except for the minor effect of goods storage. As brought out in the discussion of the cooling system analogy in Chapter 8, the production price in monetary terms is also subject to arbitrary control. And once this price is established, it determines the normal flow of money purchasing power in the entire auxiliary circuit. The economic location of the markets also has an important bearing on the way in which each market responds to any variation in the flow of money purchasing power. The production market transaction takes place before the act of production, whereas the goods market transaction takes place after production. This means that the response to a change in the flow of money entering the production market can be either a price change or a volume change, as long as the necessary labor is available, since the volume of production has not yet been determined, whereas a similar change in the amount of money entering the goods market can only affect the price, except to the minor extent that storage of goods is feasible. In this connection, it should be noted that the role of goods storage in the operation of the system is almost negligible in comparison with the total volume of production. Services cannot be stored at all. Some goods are perishable, others are too bulky, others can only be produced as ordered, and so on. Furthermore, storage is costly. The net variation in business inventories from year to year, aside from the effect of changes in the price level, is seldom more than about 1% of the total national product. In the subsequent discussion, the effect of goods storage will be noted at the appropriate points, but for most practical purposes, this factor is not significant and can be disregarded. Before proceeding farther, it may be useful to elaborate to some extent on the differentiation between the goods market and the production market. We are accustomed to classifying goods into various categories, such as those previously mentioned, durable or transient, consumer goods or producer goods, and so on. And we speak of the goods market, the investment market, etc. For some purposes, we even go still farther and distinguish between the potato market and the prune market. But such distinctions are not fundamental. From the broad general viewpoint, these markets are all part of the same thing. The money available for the purchase of potatoes can just as well be used to buy prunes, or durable consumer goods, or the capital goods that we classify as investments. But money already in the hands of consumers cannot be used in the production market to buy labor of the services of capital. Before this can happen, the money must get into the hands of producers. Likewise, money in the treasury of the General Motors Corporation is not available for buying Chevrolet cars or any other consumer goods until after General Motors has paid it out, directly or indirectly, through the production market in exchange for labor or the services of capital. The distribution between the goods market and the production market is fundamental, and the purchasing power available for use in one market stands in an entirely different relation to the economic mechanism than that which is available for use in the other market. As noted earlier, one of the far-reaching consequences of the addition of the production market to the exchange mechanism has been the transformation of economic activity from an intermittent process to a continuous process. In the earlier stages of economic development, the market transactions were mostly intermittent. The small farmer, whose operations are typical of the third stage cycle, carries on his activities over a long period of time. He prepares the soil, plants his crops, cares for them during the growing season, and finally harvests them. After this long period in which no marketing has taken place, he sells his products and then starts production again. Since the marketing transaction is the source of the farmer's income, his capacity as a worker, there are long intervals during which he is receiving no payment for his labor, and that payment which received is usually directly related to the amount of production that has been accomplished. On the other hand, the modern fourth stage cycle, where labor is marketed directly in a separate market, there is a steady flow of purchasing power to the worker. Even the person whose salary is nominally on an annual basis receives a paycheck once or twice a month. This means that there is a never-ending drain on the producer's funds, and as a practical matter of self-defense, the producers have so organized their operations that they have a continuous flow of income with which to meet this continuous outlay. But they are now faced with a never-ending task, that of maintaining this flow of income at a high enough level to sustain the current rate of expenditures. This is their primary concern in the operation of their respective enterprises. The producer of the modern type is not particularly interested in the relation between the actual cost of production of a specific item and its selling price. Usually, he will not even know that cost if any substantial time has been involved in the production process. His concern is with the current cost, a composite figure which he reaches by summing up the present cost of each of the separate operations involved in the production of the item. If a product can be sold at a price $1 per unit, and the current for some reason all the spaces are gone for the next several lines. So, and the current cost under this figure, the producer will not shut down his plants simply because the stock on hand actually cost $1 per unit, and the current cost is under this figure. The producer will not shut down his plants simply because the stock on hand actually costs $1.50 each. Likewise, his calculations for the future are not based on a comparison of present production costs against present selling prices, but on his forecasts of future costs against future selling prices. The usual economic analysis proceeds on the assumption that the producer starts from zero, that he makes a certain advance outlay for labor, capital, and materials, and that he endeavors to sell his finished products for a price which will reimburse him for his actual expenditures, and in addition will give him a satisfactory rate of return on the capital that has been invested. This is a reasonably accurate picture of the situation in the third stage economy, where the producer sells the products of his own labor, but the modern fourth stage organization, which sets the pattern for our present day economic life, is a going concern, a continuous operation that has no zero point. It is true that when an enterprise is first launched, a certain amount of expenditure must be made to build an inventory of raw materials and goods in process, and also a working stock of finished goods before income from sales begins to flow in. But the producer does not expect repayment of this expense from sales as long as the business stays alive. He sets this amount up on his books as working capital, and from his standpoint, it is the equivalent of a like amount of the fixed capital that is invested in plant and equipment. What the modern producer expects the income of his enterprise to do is not to reimburse it for past expenses, but to meet current expenses, including satisfactory earnings on the invested capital. If the operating income for the current month or the current year is sufficient to take care of operating expenses and fixed capital charges, including depreciation, and to leave a reasonable amount for the owners of the equity capital, the operations have been satisfactory, and the business can continue on the existing basis. If current income is more than adequate for these purposes, consideration can be given to reducing prices or increasing wages. If it is less than adequate, attention must be given to means of increasing income or reducing expenses. These facts are commonplace. Everyone who has had anything to do with organized business affairs is thoroughly familiar with them. To be sure, there is still a substantial volume of production being carried on by individual farmers, shopkeepers, professional people, and others who operate under third stage economic conditions. But it is the business enterprise that employs labor that dominates present day production. And it is this fourth stage mechanism that we must analyze in order to get an accurate picture of the modern economy. Even though the basic principles remain unchanged, we must nevertheless study the details of the processes that are in actual use today. We cannot solve today's problems by studying the processes that were in vogue in the days of the feudal barons. In the modern economic world, the leading role is played by the corporation, a device which has enabled a definite physical separation between producers and consumers. All corporations are producers, pure and simple. Their only function is to produce, and they take no part in consumption. It is true that they use certain goods in the course of their activities, but this is part of the productive process. It is an element in the production of other goods and does not constitute consumption, as the latter term is um, as the latter term has been defined for the purposes of this analysis. The essential difference from an analytical standpoint is that utilities are not destroyed when goods are used in production, as they are when goods are consumed. They are transformed into utilities of a different kind. The volume of production that can be attributed to any producer is the net amount after subtracting the value of goods used or wasted in the production process, the value added by production, as the statisticians call it. Individual producer consumers, in their capacity as producers, are subject to the same considerations. Producers, corporate or otherwise, are merely intermediaries by means of which the labor and capital furnished by the workers and suppliers of the services of capital are converted into goods for the benefit of those individuals. In their capacity as consumers, all goods produced by the economic machine must go to consumers, either directly or in an indirect manner by contributing to the production of other goods. All of the instrumentalities of production come to the producer from individuals in their capacities as suppliers of labor and capital. All of the proceeds go back to them. The net result to the producer is zero. And that's all the time we have today. So thanks for tuning in. And we'll resume tomorrow when we return. Thanks. Have a great day.